Deep inside a secret lab hidden beneath an icy mountain, a young alien girl floated silently inside a glowing glass tube. Her skin shimmered with a soft silver hue, and her long white hair drifted gently in the liquid. She was beautiful, but more than that, she was rare. The humans in lab coats walked past her without emotion, writing notes, checking machines, ignoring her eyes that followed them silently. Her name was Aylin, and she wasn't here by choice. Her planet had sold her, or maybe someone close to her had betrayed her. She couldn't remember clearly through the fog in her mind, the injections, the tests, the long hours in cold water. All of it made her feel like she was fading slowly, but she remembered fear and she remembered pain, and now she felt something new. Hopelessness. Outside her tube, a human janitor named Jack pushed a mop across the white-tiled floor, his back hunched, his hands rough from years of work. He wasn't important in this place, not to the guards, not to the scientists, not even to the machines. But Aylin noticed him. Every night, he came to clean the same hallway, and every night he paused for just a moment in front of her tube. One evening, when the lab was nearly empty, Jack looked up and saw her watching him again. This time she moved her lips slowly, carefully, not making a sound. Jack frowned, stepped closer, and stared at her face. She mouthed two words. "Help me." Jack blinked, unsure if he understood. Was she really speaking to him? Or was it a trick from the scientists? He glanced around. No one was nearby, only the quiet hum of machines and the soft blinking of lights. He leaned closer, and she repeated it. Even slower this time. "Help me." Jack's heart began to race. He knew what happened to test subjects in this place. He had seen the reports left in trash bins, heard screams late at night, seen workers quit and never return, but he had never been this close to one of the specimens. Now he looked into Aylin's glowing eyes, and they weren't angry or wild or alien. They were afraid, and they were pleading. That night after his shift ended, Jack couldn't sleep. He sat in his small room staring at the ceiling, hearing her voice in his mind again and again. "Help me." He opened his old handheld terminal, accessed his cleaning schedule, and noticed something strange. Her cell was in Lab 7A, Nova Project Wing. He had heard rumors about the Nova Project. They said it involved alien DNA that could heal wounds, create new organs, maybe even change life itself. But the price? No one talked about that part. Curious and nervous, Jack went back into the system and searched old maintenance records, using backdoor codes he had learned from an old friend. He found files marked "Top Clearance Only," and that's when he saw her name. Subject Aylin 3B, carrier of regenerative core DNA. Notes said she was one of a kind, the last of a royal alien bloodline sold by rebels for peace credits. Extracting her DNA would give humans the ability to control healing, life extension, maybe even death itself. But the extraction process would kill her slowly, painfully. Jack leaned back in his chair, shaken. They weren't just experimenting on her. They were going to drain her like a battery, then toss her aside. The next day, he returned to his cleaning job, hands shaking as he entered the hallway again. Aylin was awake, watching him, waiting. This time, he didn't ignore her. He looked both ways, then took a deep breath and stepped close to the glass tube. "I read about you," he whispered, pretending to wipe the glass. "Is it true?" She nodded slowly, her eyes filled with silent tears that floated in the liquid. Jack's hands trembled, but he didn't move away. He placed one hand on the tube, and after a moment, she raised hers and placed it against his, separated by the glass but connected by something deeper: compassion. He walked away quickly before cameras could see too much, but that night, he made a choice. He couldn't leave her like this. He couldn't pretend she wasn't real, wasn't someone Jack might be, just a janitor, but he still had a heart, and now he had a purpose. He would find a way to free her. But the lab was full of secrets and the walls had ears. He didn't know it yet, but someone was already watching him, and Aylin wasn't the only one in danger anymore. Jack arrived early the next day dressed in his usual gray cleaning uniform, but something had changed inside him. His hand still pushed the mop across the floor, but his eyes moved with purpose, searching, remembering what he had read the night before. The files didn't lie. Aylin wasn't just some alien prisoner, she was a living miracle. And she was being drained like a lab rat. Jack hated this place more than ever. The scientists passed him by without a second glance, speaking in hushed voices about DNA levels, harvest rates, and Phase 4 testing. He caught words like disposal plan and containment leakage, but no one mentioned her name. To them, she was just a number, a subject. Jack clenched his jaw, trying not to show emotion. He needed to stay invisible if he was going to help her. That night, after the labs emptied, he sneaked into the data center using an old maintenance badge. His fingers trembled as he typed in the stolen access code from the files he found. The screen blinked. Access granted. Rows of classified reports appeared, filled with medical scans, test results, and surveillance videos. Jack read everything, line by line, each word sinking like a weight into his chest. Aylin's DNA came from an ancient bloodline known as the Core Bearers. Only a few ever existed across the galaxy, and now she might be the last one. Her blood could regenerate dead tissue, repair organs, and maybe even cure terminal diseases. But the experiments came at a cost. Test logs showed her blood was taken daily, her energy levels dropping dangerously low each time. She wasn't healing anymore. She was dying. Slowly, Jack swallowed hard, the guilt crushing his chest. He had mopped those floors for months while this horror happened just feet away. A video file blinked at the bottom of the screen. Recorded test session 47. He clicked it on screen. Aylin lay strapped to a metal table, her eyes half closed, lips moving weakly. Scientists spoke around her like she wasn't there. One of them said, "We'll increase the draw rate tomorrow if she crashes. We'll extract the spinal cord directly." Another replied, "She's almost used up anyway." Jack slammed his fist into the console, then froze, listening for footsteps. Silence. He exhaled, then backed out of the system and erased his access trail. As he left, he didn't notice the small red light on the wall camera blinking faster. Someone had seen him. The next morning, Jack walked back into the hallway with Aylin's cell. She was awake, her eyes locking with his the second he appeared. He quickly wiped a wall panel near her tube, pretending to work. "I saw it," he whispered. "I saw everything." Her lips barely moved, but he understood. "Will you help me?" she mouthed again. He nodded once, firm and steady, but he had no plan yet. No weapons, no allies, no escape route, just a heart that refused to stay quiet. That night, he made a decision. He returned to the supply bay and found an old friend, Marlowe, a night shift mechanic who once worked in the Resistance before vanishing into low-level jobs. Marlowe was older now, eyes tired, hands stained with grease. "What are you getting into, Jack?" he asked when Jack told him the truth. Jack whispered, "There's an alien girl in Lab 7A. They're killing her slowly. I want to get her out." Marlowe didn't laugh. He didn't argue. He just asked, "Why?" Jack answered, "Because no one else will." Marlowe sighed, then opened a drawer, pulling out a tiny device. "This scrambler will jam the door systems for 90 seconds, enough time to open her tube," he said. "But after that, you're on your own." Jack took it with shaking hands. "That's all I need." He returned to his room and made notes: guard shift times, blind camera spots, air vents, storage units. He couldn't mess this up, not when her life depended on it. But what he didn't know was that someone else had already traced his data breach. Inside the command room, a tall man in a black coat stood watching surveillance footage. He was called Overseer Vorn, head of the Nova Project. His eyes narrowed as he watched Jack speaking. To Aylin in front of the tube, he turned to his assistant and said, "Mark him." Jack was now a threat. The experiment was too important to lose, and Aylin's DNA was almost ready for final extraction. No janitor would ruin that. Back in the hallway, Aylin pressed her hand to the glass again. Jack did the same, feeling the cold surface between them. Neither spoke, but they both understood. Something was about to change, and once it started, there would be no turning back. The next night came faster than Jack expected. His hands were sweaty as he slipped the small scrambler into his pocket. He had checked the shift schedule twice, timed every camera rotation, and memorized every hallway blind spot. But no plan could erase the fear in his chest. Tonight he was breaking every rule, risking everything for a girl he barely knew. But deep inside he didn't care. Aylin was alive, scared and running out of time, and someone had to care, even if it was just him. He entered Lab 7A like always, pushing the mop, acting normal, but this time his heart pounded with every step. He glanced at the camera, then down the hallway right on time. The guard at the main door stepped away for a break. Jack walked up to Aylin's tube, his hand trembling as he pressed the scrambler against the access panel. A soft hum buzzed through the air and the lights on the tube blinked red, then green. The glass began to slide open with a low hiss, steam spilling out as the fluid drained. Away. Aylin collapsed into Jack's arms, cold and weak, her body trembling. "I got you," Jack whispered. "You're safe now. Come on." She tried to speak, but her throat was dry, her voice cracked like broken glass. He wrapped her in a white lab coat he had stolen earlier, pulling the hood over her glowing hair. "We need to move now," he said, supporting her as they walked. Toward the back exit, the hallway was dim, the lights running on low power just as Marlowe had promised. But before they reached the door, a siren blared, loud and sharp. Jack froze, his heart sinking. Red lights flashed above and a robotic voice echoed through the halls. "Containment breach detected. Lockdown activated." No, Jack whispered, pulling Aylin faster. "We're so close." Doors slammed shut around them. Metal barriers sealing off escape routes. Footsteps thundered behind them. Guards shouting commands, guns charging with high-pitched whines. Aylin stumbled, but Jack lifted her, pushing forward into a side corridor he had mapped out earlier. It, too, led to the lower maintenance tunnels, dark and forgotten by most of the staff. A bullet zipped past them, striking the wall and sending sparks into the air. Jack ducked, shielding Aylin with his body as they slipped through a narrow door and slammed it shut behind them. They were in the waste tunnels now, hot, grimy, and full of echoing drips. "Keep moving," Jack said, panting. "I know a way out through the trash disposals." Aylin clutched his shoulder, her voice barely a whisper. "They know. They'll find us." Jack didn't answer. He didn't have the heart to lie. Above them, Overseer Vorn watched the chaos from his command room, eyes locked on the blinking tracker screen. "They made it to the lower sector," an officer reported. "But we lost visual. Thermal signals are faint." Vorn gritted his teeth. "Seal off Sector 9, send in the drones, do not let them reach the outer gate." Meanwhile, Jack and Aylin moved through pipes and rusted walkways, the air heavy, with steam and chemical fumes. Every sound felt louder down here, every breath harder to take. Finally, Jack pushed open a maintenance hatch, revealing a small storage room. He laid Aylin down on a soft stack of blankets he had hidden there earlier. She was pale, her skin dull. The glow fading from her eyes, Jack grabbed a water pack and placed it to her lips. "Drink this," he said gently. "It's not much, but it'll help." She sipped slowly, then looked up at him, her voice raspy. "Why are you doing this?" Jack hesitated, then said, "Because you don't deserve this, you didn't choose this, and someone should have helped you a long time ago." She blinked, eyes glassy with emotion. Jack stood up and peeked out the hatch. No sign of guards, but the drones would arrive soon. "I need to move you again," he said. "There's an old cargo chute beyond this room. It leads to the lower docks. If we can reach it, we can escape." Aylin nodded weakly, her fingers grabbing his hand. But suddenly, a loud clank echoed from behind them. Metal footsteps approaching. Jack spun around and saw a small floating drone hover into the room, its red sensor light blinking. It spotted Aylin instantly, releasing a piercing alarm. Jack didn't think. He grabbed a metal rod from the wall and swung, smashing the drone to pieces in a burst of sparks. Too late. The alarm had already gone. "Out. They know where we are," he muttered, pulling Aylin up again. "We have to run. Now." The drone was gone, crushed and silent, but its warning had already echoed through the walls. Jack didn't waste a second. He lifted Aylin into his arms and ran toward the old cargo tunnel. The metal floor shook beneath his boots. Lights above them flickered, and a mechanical voice kept repeating, "Alert. Subject escape in progress. All security units deploy immediately." Behind them, The sound of pounding boots and clicking weapons grew louder. Aylin clutched Jack's shirt, her body trembling. She was too weak to walk. Her DNA extraction had pushed her close to death. Jack's legs burned with each step, but he didn't slow down. He wasn't going to let her die in this place, not while he still had breath in his lungs. He reached the tunnel door and slammed his fist on the emergency release panel. It hissed, jammed once, then finally slid open, revealing a narrow, maintenance tunnel filled with shadows and thick pipes. Jack stepped in, sealed the door behind him, and leaned against the wall to catch his breath. He gently set Aylin down on a pile of cloth he had stashed days ago, just in case this moment ever came. She looked up at him, her voice faint. "They won't stop. They'll hunt us until we're gone." Jack nodded, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Then we keep running." In the distance, metallic echoes bounced through the pipes. The hunters were coming. Jack pulled out a small scanner device, its screen blinking softly. "Marlowe said there's an old waste chute ahead that leads to the hydro lift bay," he muttered. "If we can get to the lower decks, maybe we can sneak out on a supply skimmer." Aylin closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you for not leaving me." Jack didn't reply, but his hand gently squeezed hers. The moment passed, and then he stood, helping her to her feet. They moved carefully through the tunnel, the air thick with steam and the scent of rust. Every corner felt like a trap, every sound a warning. Suddenly, a spotlight burst through a side vent, followed by a whirring drone. Jack yanked Aylin back just in time, flattening against the wall as the drone scanned the path. Its red eye blinked, then flew away, missing them by inches. That was close. Jack breathed. Too close. They continued down the tunnel, but Aylin stumbled, her legs shaking. Jack caught her again, lowering her against the wall. "We need to rest," he said. "Just a few minutes." He looked into her face. Her silver skin had lost its glow, her breath shallow. "If we wait too long, you'll fade," he whispered, panic in his chest. Aylin looked at him, her lips moving slowly. "There's something I can do." Her fingers touched the center of her chest, glowing faintly. "I can share energy. But it takes yours too," she warned. Jack shook his head. "You need it more than I do." But Aylin pressed her hand to his forehead, gently, and for a moment warmth flowed between them. His fatigue faded slightly and her eyes brightened just a little. Then she pulled her hand away, exhausted. "We have to go," she said. "Now." They kept moving, reaching the end of the tunnel, where a large round hatch marked Waste Disposal Sector B stood. Jack accessed the old keypad, fingers shaking. Behind them, metal footsteps returned. Closer now, louder. A red targeting laser blinked along the wall. "They found us," Aylin whispered, eyes wide with fear. Jack opened the hatch and they dropped into the darkness below, landing hard on metal grates surrounded by old scrap and debris. He pulled her behind a pile of broken machines, covering her with tarp. Just then, 3 guards dropped in from above, weapons drawn, scanning the room. Jack stayed completely still, holding his breath, one arm over Aylin. The guards moved slowly, searching between pipes, calling out in harsh voices. One passed inches from them, but didn't look down. Jack held, still until the last boot step faded away. Then he whispered, "Let's move fast." He helped Aylin to her feet again, guiding her down a small maintenance shaft he had studied before. It led to a forgotten sector where waste pods were ejected from the base. "Down here," he said, "we'll hide in a pod and eject ourselves with the trash. It's risky, but it's our only shot." Aylin nodded slowly, barely able to walk now. He opened the panel to pod chamber 4. Luckily, it hadn't been used in weeks. The chamber was dark. Filled with dust and silence, Jack laid Aylin inside gently, covering her with old thermal blankets. He climbed in next to her and activated the pod's manual eject button. The machine clicked, lights flashing red, then green. "We're doing this," Jack whispered. "Hold on." The pod rumbled, then shot forward into the darkness of the external chute. They were finally leaving the facility, but where they would land, or who would find them next, was still unknown. The pod slammed into the cold dirt, skidding across rocky ground before finally stopping near a broken canyon wall. Inside, Jack groaned as he sat up, his shoulder bruised from the landing. Beside him, Aylin stirred, her eyes fluttering open slowly. We made it, Jack whispered, pushing open the hatch. We're outside. The air smelled different, dry and real, not filtered like inside the facility. Above them, stars blinked in a clear night sky, the twin moons glowing gently. They had escaped, but they weren't safe yet. Jack pulled Aylin out carefully and looked around in the distance. Broken towers stood like skeletons of a forgotten mining colony. This place is abandoned, he said. We can hide here. Aylin leaned on him as they walked toward the ruins, each step slow and painful. Her body was still weak, but she smiled, softly, feeling real ground under her feet for the first time in months. Inside one of the ruined buildings, Jack laid her on an old mat and checked her pulse. You need more than just rest, he muttered. We need to find help. Jack opened his comlink, a secret device Marlowe had given him. He pressed the button and said, Marlowe, we're out. Send. Pick up. There was silence, then static, and finally a voice crackled through. Jack, you actually made it? Yeah, Jack said. We're by the old mining station near Sector 19. She's not going to last long out here. All right, Marlowe replied. I'll get someone. Jack ended the call and looked at Aylin, who was trying to sit up. We'll get you to safety soon, he said, brushing her hair back gently. But Aylin's eyes were distant, her voice quiet. Be careful, Jack. Not everyone helps for the right reason, he smiled. Marlowe's different. He helped me steal the scrambler. He risked his job for this. Aylin nodded slowly, but something in her expression stayed uncertain. 2 hours passed and finally, a small hovercraft appeared in the distance. Headlights cutting through the dust, it stopped just outside the ruins and Marlowe stepped out, wearing his mechanic coat and a tired smile. You did it, he said, walking up. You crazy janitor actually pulled it off. Jack laughed, exhausted. Not alone. Marlowe looked at Aylin, his eyes scanning her carefully. She's smaller than I expected. She's strong, Jack said, helping her up. Just needs time. They climbed aboard the hovercraft and Marlowe turned the vehicle back toward the distant hills. But after a few minutes, Jack noticed something strange. Marlowe wasn't heading toward the resistance. Camp, he checked the nav system. Locked coordinates, private channel, unknown destination. Where are we going? Jack asked, trying to stay calm. Marlowe didn't look back. Somewhere safer. Jack narrowed his eyes. Marlowe, what's going on? There was a long silence. Then Marlowe finally sighed. I made a deal, Jack, he said. The girl, her, DNA, it's worth more than anything in the galaxy. Jack felt his chest tighten. You sold her out? I didn't want to, Marlowe said. But I've got people who need help too. Sick kids, debts, and when they offered me a way out. Jack stood up, furious. You liar. She trusted me. I trusted you. Aylin looked at Jack, then at Marlowe. And her eyes filled with quiet pain. Jack grabbed a wrench from the side rack, holding it tight. Turn this thing around now. But Marlowe pressed a button on his wrist and a shock pulse ran through the hovercraft, dropping Jack to the floor. Aylin screamed, trying to crawl to him, but her body was too weak. I didn't want it to be this way, Marlowe said quietly. But someone's going to come pick her up in 20 minutes and they promised not to hurt her. Just use her DNA and let her live in comfort. She'll die, Jack growled, pulling himself up. They'll drain her like the lab did, Aylin closed her eyes, whispering softly, her voice full of sadness. I warned you, not everyone helps for the right reason. Just then something flickered from her chest, a soft pulse of energy. The lights in the hovercraft flickered, sparks danced in the air, and a sudden wave of heat surged through the floor. Marlowe turned around in panic. What is she doing? Aylin sat up straighter, her skin glowing with silver light, eyes bright and full of pain and power. You betrayed him, she said calmly. And you threatened me. She touched the panel beside her, and the hovercraft's engine burst with white light, sending Marlowe flying against the side, unconscious. Jack crawled to her, blinking from the sudden flash. You okay? He asked, holding her hand. Aylin nodded. But I can't do that again. It took everything I had left. Jack looked at Marlowe, knocked out cold, and then back at the road. We'll drive ourselves, he said. I know a safe house where no one will find us. He took the controls, pushed the hovercraft into motion, and sped off into the night. Behind them, the location Marlowe had sent was already pinged by another signal. Overseer Vorn watched from a black tower far away, his face cold. "They're still alive," he muttered. "And now I want them both." The B hovercraft moved through the empty wastelands like a ghost. Jack kept his eyes on the path ahead, his hands tight on the controls. Beside him, Aylin leaned against the seat, her body trembling with every bump. Her glow was fading fast, her skin pale and cold. Each breath sounded weaker than the last. Jack's heart pounded with fear. "We're almost there," he whispered. "Hold on a little longer." Ahead, a jagged cliff appeared, its face cracked with age. At the base of it, hidden behind old mining gear and rock debris, was a steel door. Half buried, half forgotten. Jack stopped the hovercraft and rushed to open it. He scanned his access card and entered a manual code he had memorized long ago. With a loud groan, the door opened, revealing a small hidden shelter built decades before. "This used to be a rebel safe house," he said softly, carrying Aylin inside. "It has old tech, food rations, and maybe something that can help you." He laid her on a padded table and searched the back room. Dust covered everything, but the power was still connected to a solar array above. In the corner, covered by a thick sheet, Jack found what he was hoping for: a medical pod, old, scratched, and dusty, but still glowing faintly with power. He wiped the surface, revealing faded alien markings. Aylin opened her eyes slowly. "That's a Zarian pod. Rare." "Will it heal you?" Jack asked, hope in his voice. Aylin hesitated, her voice weak. "Yes, but it scans DNA before starting, and if it does that, they'll find me." Jack paused, staring at the pod. If the scanner activated, it would send out a signal to nearby networks, including the lab's tracking system. But if he did nothing, she would die. He walked back to her and gently took her hand. "You have to trust me," he said. "I'll block the signal manually. I've done it before." Aylin looked at him with tired eyes. "If you get it wrong, the pod could burn out, or kill me." Jack took a breath. "Then I won't get it wrong." He helped her into the pod, her body limp and light in his arms. Once inside, she closed her eyes, her chest rising slowly. Jack opened the side panel and looked at the circuits. Half the wires were melted, and the signal transmitter blinked red. He reached for his toolkit and carefully pulled out the transmitter crystal, his fingers steady despite his racing heart. One wrong move, and everything would go dark. He found a bypass route using 2 copper strips and fused the connections with a handheld spark tool. The scanner flickered once, then twice, and finally turned green. No signal was sent. Jack exhaled deeply, sweat dripping from his forehead. The pod lit up with soft blue light, and Aylin's body relaxed inside. The healing process had begun. He sat beside her, watching as her color slowly returned. Her chest rose stronger now, her silver veins glowing faintly beneath her skin. But peace never lasted long. Back at the facility, Overseer Vorn sat in his command chair, staring at a blinking red screen. "Sir," a technician said. There was a brief pulse, just a fragment, but it came from an old Zarian healing system. Vorn stood up, eyes sharp. "Location?" "Near the old mining ruins." Vorn smirked. "He's trying to save her." He turned to his elite guards. "Send the shadow team, full gear, no warnings. Bring them both back." Back at the shelter, Jack was unaware of the danger rushing. Toward them, he checked the pod screen. 70% complete. He stood up, grabbed a blaster from the supply locker, and began placing sensors around the entrance. Then he spotted movement on the outer camera. 3 black shapes moving fast. "No," he whispered. "They found us." He rushed back to Aylin's pod, the screen now reading 85%. He knelt beside her. "Aylin, wake up, they're coming." Inside the pod, her eyes fluttered but didn't open. He looked at the timer. 3 minutes left. Gunfire cracked outside, hitting the metal door. Jack locked the control panel and turned on the auto defense. The outer wall lit up with sparks as the first intruder tried to break in. Jack took position near the door, gripping the blaster tightly. "This time I won't run," he muttered. "I'll protect you." The door burst open with a loud bang, and black armored soldiers rushed in. Jack fired first, hitting one in the shoulder and sending him down. The second guard fired back, missing by inches as Jack ducked behind a crate. Smoke filled the room, blaster bolts lighting the air. Then a soft hum filled the space the pod had completed. A bright light flashed, and Aylin stepped out slowly, standing tall. Her eyes glowed bright silver, her skin shimmering with power. The guards paused, frozen by her presence. Jack stared in awe. You're glowing." Aylin raised her hand, and a wave of soft energy pushed through the room, knocking the guards off their feet without a single sound. They collapsed instantly, unharmed but unconscious. Jack lowered his weapon, breathing heavily. That was incredible. Aylin walked over and helped him stand, her touch warm and steady. "You saved me," she whispered. "Now it's my turn." They stepped out of the shelter together, stronger than before. But in the shadows above, a small drone silently followed them, recording every moment. The stars stretched wide above the rocky horizon. The wind blew gently across the ruins, carrying dust and silence. Jack and Aylin stood at the edge of the shelter, their backs to the flickering lights inside. Behind them, the unconscious soldiers lay motionless, their weapons scattered. Aylin's silver glow had faded to a soft pulse, her energy calmer now, but still powerful. Jack looked at her with quiet awe. "You're different now," Aylin nodded. "The pod didn't just heal me. It awakened something deeper." Suddenly, a sharp beep came from Jack's scanner. He looked down and saw a red warning flashing across the screen. Multiple aerial signals inbound. Fast. Aylin narrowed her eyes. "Vorn's sending everything. This time," Jack turned toward the cliffs. "We can't stay here." "We won't," Aylin said, her voice calm. "It's time to stop running." She raised her hand, and a small hidden panel on her wrist blinked open, revealing a round crystal embedded in her skin. Jack stared at it, confused. "What is that?" "My last secret," she whispered. "A beacon, coded to a royal escape vessel hidden long ago." Jack's eyes widened. "You had a ship this whole time?" "No," she said. "I had a key. The ship needed activation by a core bearer, someone who was never meant to survive." She pressed the crystal, and a soft blue light pulsed into the sky. Far in the distance, the clouds shifted, then split as a sleek silver craft broke through the atmosphere. Its design was like nothing Jack had ever seen. Graceful, silent, alive. The ship hovered above them and slowly descended toward the canyon floor, landing gently without a sound. Just then, explosions echoed in the distance. Jack turned and saw black transport craft speeding over the ridge, weapons glowing red. "They're coming in heavy," he said, raising his blaster. Aylin looked at him. "You've done enough, Jack. Let me finish this." "No," he said firmly. "I didn't come this far to leave you now." The silver ship's ramp opened, casting blue light across the ground. A smooth voice echoed from inside the ship. "Royal signature confirmed. Escape mode armed." Aylin turned to Jack. "Once we board, it'll lock down and vanish from scanners, but we only have one chance." As they ran toward the ramp, blaster fire struck the ground beside them. Dirt exploded upward as the first wave of soldiers arrived. Shouting and firing, Jack fired back, hitting two, diving behind a rock with Aylin. "We can't outrun them all," he said, teeth gritted. Aylin reached into her coat and pulled out a glowing orb. "Then I won't run." She stood tall, lifting the orb above her head. Jack shouted, "What are you doing?" "This is the last of my father's essence," she said softly. "It was meant for war, but I will use it for peace." She whispered something in her native language, and the orb burst in her hands, sending out a shockwave of light. Every soldier stopped, frozen in place, eyes wide with confusion. The weapons in their hands powered down, their targeting systems fried. The enemy ships hovering above began to drift and drop slowly to the ground. Jack watched in disbelief. "You just shut down the whole army?" Aylin collapsed to her knees, the glow fading from her hands. Jack rushed to her side. "Aylin, I'm okay," she whispered. "Just tired. Let's go." He helped her to her feet, and they boarded the ship together. Inside, the walls shimmered like liquid metal, the air warm and humming with power. As they reached the control deck, the ship responded to Aylin's presence, the engines lighting up with soft pulses. Jack looked through the window as the canyon disappeared below them, the enemy now powerless to follow. The ship shot upward, fast and silent, cutting through clouds like light through water. A calm voice spoke again. Destination, unknown. Coordinates, safety protocol engaged. Jack turned to Aylin, who sat beside him, breathing slowly. You saved us all, he said quietly. You saved yourself. She looked at him and smiled gently. No, we saved each other. They sat in silence as the stars opened around them, the planet growing smaller in the distance. But just as they reached the outer edge of the atmosphere, a final signal blinked on the ship's console. A message, sent from deep space, encrypted, royal-level clearance. Aylin tapped it and a soft voice played, one she hadn't heard in years. It was her mother speaking in ancient dialect. If you're hearing this, it means you survived, and that you found someone to help you. I was forced to let you go to protect you from those who wanted to turn your gift into a weapon. But if you made it to this ship, then your heart stayed pure, and you are ready to choose your own path. Tears filled Aylin's eyes as the message faded. She looked at Jack, and for the first time her expression held no fear, no pain, just peace. Where do we go now? Jack asked. Somewhere new, Aylin replied. Somewhere we're free. The ship blinked into light speed, vanishing into the stars. Behind them, the planet continued to spin, the ruins silent once more. But in the galaxy beyond, a new story had just begun.